that a great song?
Yeah.
We just started teaching them that last week in chapel. And Aubrey was a little shy, but she's been singing it at home every day. We've been having so much fun in chapel. We have 6 children right now in our preschool. And we have had so much fun with the kids. It's just been amazing to watch. And I guess Carolyn came on Friday and helped Miss Yesenia with the Easter egg hunt. So they had a ball. We were at home. I hadn't come down to church yet to set everything up. And so my wife and I were in the kitchen watching the kids go nuts with chasing after the Easter eggs on Friday morning. It was pretty cool. And Miss Yesenia dressed up as a rabbit. She was so cute. She had ears on. Her face made her face. That was so cute. In fact, we saw her Friday afternoon when we came to set up for Good Friday, and she still had all her makeup on and stuff. It was pretty cool. Have you ever had to do something necessary but didn't want to do it? And you get that nervous feeling in your stomach, and it's like grinding, and you can almost hear it. It's almost growling at you, and you have that nervous feeling just comes over you, and your stomach starts doing cartwheels and all that kind of thing. And so every step you take closer to the event, your stomach's doing that. The stomach gets tighter and tighter and tighter. We've all had that, right? I remember the first time that actually happened to me. My Aunt May had died, my dad's oldest sister. And my dad was suffering from cancer, and so he couldn't go to the funeral. So he said, "You're the oldest son, so you need to go and represent the family." So I drove up to LA and went to the funeral, and I was asked to be a pallbearer for my aunt, which I thought was a pretty cool honor. I was the youngest of all the cousins by about 30 years. Seriously. And so I was scared to death, because not only was I the youngest cousin trying to be a pallbearer, representing my dad, which is the patriarch of the family, but I'd never seen a dead body before. I was terrified. I was a teenager. I think I was 17 years old. And I remember walking into the chapel, and my aunt was up front wearing a blue dress and a blue coffin. And I'm going, I was afraid to go forward. My stomach was turning up and down. It was like, ugh! I said, okay, you gotta do this. Man up, you gotta do this. So finally I made my way to the coffin and gave my respects to my aunt, and I was so thankful when they finally closed the lid. Well, I think that's where we find Mary and Mary this morning in the gospel. Their stomachs are turning. There's great anxiety and fear and trepidation as they make their way to the tomb. But they knew what had to be done. For Jesus' body needed to be prepared, and they needed to put the burial perfumes upon him for his final journey. At least that's what they thought needed to be done. But I wonder if Mary, in that nervous state that they were, began to ponder, why didn't Peter offer to come with them? Or, where was Andrew? In fact, where were all the male disciples? How come none of them volunteered to go with them for one reason or another? But you know, and I know, that they were all probably hunkered down in the upper room for fear of what might happen.
In disbelief.
In disbelief, absolutely. Then I wonder if they began to wonder if the disciples weren't there. What about all the others? Where were they? Where were the others? Where was the woman caught in adultery? Where were the lepers, at least the one who returned? Where was Zacchaeus? Where was the legion? Where was the woman who had the bleeding disorder? Where was Lazarus? The list could go on and on of who wasn't there. But in the reality of it all, as Jerry is singing the song at the crack of dawn, and the rooster crowing, it is Mary and Mary making the journey to the tomb. And they carried with them their perfumes and their salves to put on the scorned and torn and abused and limp body of Jesus who lay in the tomb. But I wonder if halfway through, on their way to the tomb, what if they had sat down and reconsidered why they were going? What would have happened if they looked at each other and shrugged and said, what's the use? What if they had given up? Like the disciples seem to have done. What if they threw up their arms in frustration and bemoaned? We're tired of being the only ones to be around Jesus when things get tough. We should have let Peter and Andrew do some of this for a change. We should have let James and John jump in and show some leadership for a change. After all, weren't Peter and James and John part of Jesus' inner circle? Maybe, I guess that was only applicable for the good times. But when the times get tough, they fade into the wormwood of Jerusalem. Were the ladies tempted to quit? Aren't you glad they didn't? Isn't that cool that they didn't? That would have been quite tragic. We may still be waiting. But I thought it's great that we are the witnesses of the witnesses. Think about that. You are witnesses of the witnesses. And we know something that they didn't. We know that the Father was watching. We know that Mary and Mary thought they were alone on this journey to the tomb. But they were not. They thought their journey was unnoticed. But it wasn't. God knew. God was watching them walk toward the tomb, walk up that road. And God was measuring their steps, and God was smiling. Picture that. God was smiling. God was smiling at them because he saw in their hearts and was thrilled with their devotion, their commitment to his only Son. That God had an amazing surprise for them when they got to the tomb. No? Think about the surprise that was waiting for them at the tomb. As they were breathing hard and exhausted spiritually, emotionally, and physically as they drew closer to the tomb, pondering who will roll away the stone. Remember, who was going to roll away the stone? But before they can clear their thoughts and their minds about who's going to roll away the stone as they drew close, they noticed that the stone had been rolled away. Now fear really had to set in, right? It was scary enough just going to the tomb, but now the stone was rolled away. In their minds, they had to think, who rolled away the stone? The gospel implies that Jesus was already out when the stone was moved. There's nowhere in the Gospels say that the angel moved the stone for Jesus. But we can deduce that the stone was moved for the women. Think about that for a minute. The stone was not moved so that Jesus could get out.
That's right.
Did you hear me? Hear that again. The stone was not moved so Jesus could get out, but the stone was moved so the woman could come in. Wow. Jesus didn't need no stone to be moved for him. But God needed to move the stone so the woman could come in. In fact, so everyone could come in down the road. So as they began to creep closer to the opening of this tomb, their level of fear had heightened to such a degree because all of a sudden they realized that the soldiers who were supposed to be guarding the stone in the tomb were no longer guarding it, so to speak, because they were like dead, laying next to the stone that had been moved. I'm sure as they stepped lightly, you can picture them kind of stepping lightly, kind of like, better not wake up the soldiers, this could be really trouble. And their eyes got as big as saucers. And that inner voice screaming in their head, dare you go in? And what if the soldiers awake and find us in the tomb? They might get us for trespassing, let alone stealing Jesus. And their hearts begin to pound louder and louder and louder with each step. And they can hear every step that they make as they draw closer to the tomb. What's funny is they don't even notice who's sitting on top of the stone. They're so blown away that the stone has been moved that all they see is the opening. But they don't see the angel who happens to be there at the same time. They had missed the angel because they had been so distracted by this stone being rolled away. But maybe they didn't see him also because their eyes were bloodshot from crying for the past 36 hours. Maybe sleep deprivation caused so they couldn't see the angel. But the angel stops them in their tracks. And they probably look at each other. Mary looks at Mary, and Mary looks at Mary. That guy sounds funny, doesn't it? But it's true. As they look at each other, they probably pause to think, what in the world is this? Maybe say one another, do you see what I see? Do we go in? What do we do now? But before they can say anything or do anything, the angel speaks to them and says to them, do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said he would. Come, see the place where the Lord lay. The text is kind of funny here because the text doesn't tell us that Mary went into the tomb, but I'm sure they wanted to see for themselves that Jesus was not there. So as they probably peeked in, saw where he had laid, and it wasn't there in Matthew's gospel, they began to head out. And then the angel says to them once more, he says, go quickly now, tell his disciples he has been raised from the dead, and now he is going to Galilee ahead of you. There you will see him, and remember what I have told you. Think about that for a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, you're in Mary and Mary. How much are you going to remember? Think about this. This is news. Mind-boggling news that they have to work through. Yet the angel says, remember what I told you. Go. Then the text reports, so they left the tomb in a hurry, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. You think? It's like, duh. Why wouldn't they run in fear? They just seen a stone rolled away. They saw the two soldiers laying dead beside the tomb, and the tomb empty. Who's going to blame them for running? Who's going to blame them for being afraid? Who's going to blame them? What just happened? But Mary cannot get out of there fast enough. And as I said, who wouldn't be so scared as they skedaddled their way to Jerusalem on their way to Galilee to stop in Jerusalem because that's where the disciples were. So let's take a look at what has transpired in our story so far. It says, first, they found that the stone was rolled away. Second, the soldiers guarding the tomb were lying passed out next to it. Third, Jesus wasn't there. And the angel told them to hurry and go tell the disciples. So that's where we find ourselves. And they had every reason to be fearful, as we said. They definitely wanted to be there when the soldiers, or they did not want to be there when the soldiers woke up, right? So it made sense that they would head out of town or head for Jerusalem. They were filled with joy because Jesus had somehow risen from the dead. So they dropped their spices. Can you imagine that? They dropped their spices. They didn't need them anymore. They dropped their spices and everything and skedaddled to go tell the disciples the good news. A funny thing happened on the way to Jerusalem, folks. For What happened next? Suddenly, Jesus met them and said, "Peace be with you." And they came up to him, took hold of his feet, and worshipped him. "Do not be afraid," Jesus said to them. "Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me." But unlike their experience at the tomb, they were not caught flat-footed. In fact, as soon as Jesus said, "Peace be with you," they took hold of him and said, "Jesus." Wow. They didn't let the grass grow under their feet, did they? They immediately fell down and worshipped Jesus, grabbing hold of him and not wanting to let go. And as I heard and read that story, it reminded me of Peter up on the mountain with Jesus at the Transfiguration before Jesus comes down into Jerusalem to be crucified. Up on the mountain, Peter grabs hold of Jesus and says, "Look, this is a great thing. Let me grab hold of you. Let me build three houses here for you. One for you, one for Moses, and one Elijah. Let's hold on to this moment." And Jesus told Peter, "No." It's the same thing he says to Mary and Mary in our story. But can you blame the woman for wanting to hold on to Jesus? Okay, folks, if Jesus walked in here right now, who wants to hold on to him?
Yeah.
Oh, no, West, you don't want to hold on to him? What's wrong? I better see every hand go up. Let's try this again. If Jesus walked in this room right now, who would want to hold on to Jesus? There we go. Okay, I just have to make sure. Come on, it's Easter. Jesus is risen. If he walked into this room, we'd be scared, yeah, but we'd be filled with joy and want to grab hold of him. But Jesus, as they grab hold of him, looks down on them and he says, "Mary and Mary, stop. This is not the time for this. I have other things I still need to do. Go to Galilee, and I'll meet you there." Go ahead and go to the next slide, Phil. In Matthew's gospel, he presents a God full of surprises here. It's as if God said, "I can't wait any longer, and I can't wait to go tell them and drop in on Mary and Mary for their faithfulness." When you think about it, our God is a God of surprises. Our God is a God of surprises. God does that for the faithful. God, just when we think God can't have a surprise, he has one. Think about it. Sarah, 99 years old, gets pregnant. Is that not a surprise? All you women can really smile at that. And just when failure seems so great, God pardons David. Just when the road seems too dark for Mary and Mary, the angel glows and says he is risen and reveals himself to the woman, which they'll never be the same again, Mary and Mary, nor will we. Here's our takeaway from the text of the resurrection. Don't give up. There are days when you want to give up. Don't give up. Is the trail dark in our life? Sometimes. Don't sit down. Keep walking. Is the road long? Don't stop. You'll get there. Is the night bleak and black? The sun will rise in your life. Because God is watching. For you all know, right, at this moment, God may be telling the angel to move a stone for you. Maybe the check is in the mail. Maybe an apology that you've been waiting for a long time is coming. Maybe the job offer is coming in a text, a phone call, or an email. Don't quit. For if you do, you may miss the answer to your prayers, that God still sends angels. That God still moves the stones in our lives from our own tombs. On this resurrection day, here is my prayer for all of us. May we all have the courage of Mary and Mary to do what we think we cannot do. The curiosity to keep looking. The desire to know Jesus more deeply. The fearlessness of Mary and Mary when fear wants to take it away. Trust that confronts our anxiety in Christ. Preparation for all that life has to throw at us. And finally, a joyful and eager heart, soul, and mind to tell others to see that God still removes stones in our lives, and that we too will see him on our journey. And all of God's people